Hi. Remember me? I'm that weird guy that made Sedulous 2 decades ago. You know me. No, you don't. Me neither. A lot of you seem to like that level. It even won Best Design Level 2020 in the GD Awards. Wait, that what? I've started a new level called Serenity. The video you're watching right now is the first episode in this progress report series. Every time I finish a new part or a new section of this level on my Twitch live streams, I'll make a video about it, explaining how I came up with it, what I did, add some time lapses, and just generally show you how I built my levels. Sounds good? Yeah. Chapter 1. What in God's name are we doing? Do you want to see how I made this? And this? And that?
Good enough, right?
Well, before I show that, I think you need to first know the main idea and goal behind this level. Otherwise, you will just be confused about what kind of fever dream you've wandered into. There's so much of it. There's so much of it everywhere. After the absolute mess that was Sedulous, I wanted to go back to simplicity. Take things down a notch and just focus on making a level without making people's screen look like someone dropped a plate of glowy spaghetti on it. The underlying theme of this level was supposed to be discovering the fun behind simplicity. So naturally, we completely failed that task.
Oh no. Oh, help me. That's a lot. That's actually a lot. Oh no. Oh.
Chapter 2. The actual progress report.
This should have been chapter 1.
The level starts off with this simple animation. It's a really cool concept that I want to show you. If you look at this animation in the editor, you can already guess how this works. You see these alpha triggers that are sitting right above it? Basically, the way it works is this is just a ring that animates outwards. We've put a lot of different rings in the same spot. Then the only other thing I did is on top of these rings, add some objects to mask the shape of the rings. In this case, we have this flower pattern, and we just made the entire thing rotate, and that's what creates this cool effect. Next up is this entire ball part. I especially really like this part because it isn't just a part to look cool. When I made this part, the underlying idea was to open up the level to the song, as if this entire level was in a dimension that was locked and the player is the explorer that explores this new dimension. But to get there, he first has to open up the level, which is why every time you move up and down with the ball, the ground and the ceiling move up and down, slowly symbolizing the entire level opening up, as if the gates to this realm are being unlocked with every player move. If you look closely at every single player input, we have one of these move triggers, and these aren't just normal move triggers, they actually are touch triggered move triggers. For the people that don't know what touch trigger does, it basically creates this cyan box around the move trigger, and if the player enters this cyan box, it triggers the move trigger. So every time the player comes along, presses the button, goes to the ceiling, it activates this move trigger, making the entire ceiling move up one block. Another thing I wanted to show off are these things. These actually are particles that use a very clever trick. Check this out. Do you see the particles move every single time I press a button? The effect this creates is an impact effect, which means every time the player touches the floor or the ceiling, these particles move down with the ground, giving this effect of impact, which just is a tiny little detail that adds a lot in my opinion. This section I'm really proud of. Not only did I go full on out on my glowy doodle noodles, we also completely on accident came up with this cool effect, where the background blends into the block design itself. Wait, what the f? That was not on purpose. I know, I'm a genius. In this part, I basically played around with a lot of triangle shapes, giving them different widths, different sizes. Then I filled all of them up with different doodle noodle designs. That is a word that I came up with, and it's not a word that you can take away from me. I plopped down some move triggers, made them all move smoothly to the music, and bam, a nice dynamic part. The way the background works is actually really funny. Because I have my actual background color set to black, that means you can't see it unless there's something behind it. Which is exactly what's happening in these block designs, which I accidentally layered in the right way to discover that we could sandwich the background right between the back block design and the block design in the front. Now we're getting into the territory of parts where you can't even see anything anymore unless you're in preview mode. Before I even start explaining this one, I think I should just show you how it looks like. Finally, we're getting into the spicy stuff. Let's start with this neon shadow effect. It basically works very similar to the first effect I showed in this video. You basically have something glowy underneath and you mask it with something dark on top. In this case, it's 3 laser bars that move up in different intervals that are hidden by this artwork that I showed off in another clip on this channel. But I know what you want, right? You want a time lapse. Don't blink. Done. Happy? Any complaints can be redirected to Sarah's DMs. Thank you very much. Another cool detail about this part is how the spikes that you jump over slowly start floating upwards. This was an idea given to me by Foxo on my Discord server, and I love it. Thank you. I appreciate it. You're great. Keep it up. I could have just stopped the thank you. These light rays at the top here were made with these objects down here, but just super scaled to 9.94. Another cool thing we did is use these glowy dots and make them rise up as the player jumps. The important part here with this one though is that I assigned 2 different move groups to different kinds of particles. The reason we do that is because if all of them move at the same speed over the same amount of time, it makes them look robotic. It doesn't make them feel dynamic and natural. So by using 2 move groups, one slower than the other, you can create a very natural feeling in movements and particles. Another really interesting effect is caused by these. These are 2 speed changes put like 1 pixel next to each other. So you speed up and immediately slow down to the actual speed again. The reason we do that is to have particles fly in from the right side of the screen every time the player jumps, which again just reinforces the idea of impact. It puts more value behind the player's input, and I love that feeling. And that basically concludes all the little tricks we did in this part. Everything else is just glowy doodle noodles. Which brings us to the last part in this progress report. And I've already actually made a video about this one, so I'm gonna use parts of that to explain. This giant transition actually works completely the same as the effect that I showed off at the beginning of this level. We got the glowy rings expanding from the middle to the outwards, and instead of just a simple rose pattern, we drew an entire doodle fest on top of it this time. If you want to see the entire time lapse, but slower, you can click on the video in the annotation at the top right. After completing the artwork, the only things left to do were making sure that it rotates in the right way. Once to the right, once to the left. And the very last step was, of course, adding the T3 glow. Ever since I discovered T3 glow, there has not been one part where I didn't use it. Basically, you grab this giant sheet, give it blending, give it a color, and you make it pulse in a different color in moments that you want to emphasize. And there you go, the start of Serenity.